The Post-Colonial Podcast is a podcast hosted by Mary and Kadra, a weekly podcast exploring decolonization and the question of if a nature can truly be decolonized, or is it forever feeling the effects of colonialism. In this second season, we're exploring the Year of Africa, a period between 1950 and 1970, where nations in Africa gained independence from European colonization. Don't miss the first season, where we went in depth about decolonization of India under British rule. In this episode, we're going to be going over Morocco's freedom from Spanish and French colonial rule. What do you know about Morocco, Mary?
For a bit of background, they became official on March 2nd, 1955, when Sultan Sidi Mohammed bin Yusuf became Sultan. Their current king is Mohammed VI. Morocco is a Muslim country. The people there are very religious and have many standards and customs. These include participation and respect for Ramadan, dressing modestly, especially for women, and reverence towards various religious monuments or buildings. Society here is very distinct and beautiful. Just by looking, you're able to see the vibrant structures and beautiful, colorful culture in their cities. Everyday life for these people is the brilliant arts and handicrafts, lively architecture, and bustling marketplaces. The main languages spoken here are Arabic and French, but English is spoken in tourist spots.
Wow, Morocco is a really fascinating place.
Right? Let's just dive right into the history of how Morocco gained freedom from Spanish and French colonial rule through decolonization. And just like Kadra mentioned, don't forget to check out our previous episodes.
Well, we have to start somewhere. So what even is decolonization?
To understand decolonization, we first have to know what colonization and colonialism are. Let's define a few of these words here. So, Kadra, what is colonization?
The exact definition of colonization is the action of settling among and establishing control over indigenous people of an area. Basically, it is the process of taking control of a state by establishing a colony, using its resources, and expanding culture, maybe to grow a state.
This is usually not ideal for the people being colonized. So when you think of colonization, think of displacement, oppression, and exploitation. It's beneficial for one side, which is why you have to think about it from both perspectives. Would you really want to be stuck on the other end here?
That makes a lot of sense. No, it doesn't sound like the most fun to have your land be taken over by someone else, does it? But then, what does make colonialism? Isn't that the same thing?
Colonization is the action, while colonialism is more the system or ideology behind it. The idea controlling other countries or territories. So now that we know what these are, what is decolonization?
It's the opposite. As we discussed, colonization itself is the practice of taking control of a nation's land, resources, as well as culture and language forcefully. Decolonization is the opposing act, the process of becoming independent from colonization. This can be seen in many different ways, including revolutions, reclaiming culture, and inserting sovereignty. This is not always an easy process. The people in charge don't want you to have your own independence. When done right and successfully, decolonization can overall have a huge advantage on those areas breaking free from their controllers.
What was Morocco before colonization? You see, Berbers were the first people in Morocco, having lived there for thousands of years. Later on, Phoenicians came and built trading cities like Carthage. Then Romans took over parts of Morocco and built other cities like Volubilis.
Did they have any religion? Where did it come from?
Yes, the religion started fairly early. In the 600s, Arabs brought Islam to Morocco after their prophet Muhammad died. Over time, Morocco became a strong Islamic kingdom. The native Berbers were even converted and became Muslim. This is the era Islamic ideals and beliefs began to spread and take root in their culture.
Yes, Islam was brought from the Middle East from the Arabs. As you said, many were not happy with it at first, but with time, they eventually started accepting the religion. They even started helping spread it themselves. As the years went on, mosques, places where Muslims prayed, Islamic schools, and cities grew massively. These cities became places of religious and learning centers. They were very important places during this time and still today because of the way they brought people together through religion and taught unity, law, and the ways of life.
Fun fact, the first mosque was built in the 700s in one of the learning center religion cities, the city of Fez.
That's interesting. Now, going back to power, may I ask what some of the Muslim empires were that ruled before colonization?
The first real Moroccan Muslim state was the Idrisid dynasty in the 800s. Following in the years 1000 to 1800 came the Almoravid dynasty, Almohad dynasty, Marinid dynasty, Sahadi dynasty, and the Alawite dynasty. All of these had major Muslim influence. By the 1800s, Morocco was still independent but under the eye of Europe. They were still weak due to pressure.
But they still ruled over some regions, right? I heard that some Moroccan rulers controlled parts of Spain, West Africa, and the Sahara. Is that true?
That's right. Even though their power was weakened by Europe and economic struggles, they still had at least some dominance over these zones at that point.
Moroccan colonization started in 1912 with Spain and France's protectorate in Morocco. They were divided in two parts under the system, which basically meant Morocco was still its own country but controlled by European powers, France and Spain.
The French controlled the largest and most centralized part, while the Spanish controlled the north and a small part in the south. It's a bit confusing and backwards. Even though Morocco still had a king, France and Spain were actually in control. Not as leaders, but power. They made the real decisions. They controlled the army, schools, trade, laws, and other key components.
So what could the king do?
Well, he could still keep his title and keep religion, culture prominent by doing those sorts of duties. Keeping peace, essentially. Other than that, nothing really. Kedra, could you explain to our listeners the reason colonization has actually occurred?
Sure. So, as you probably know, back in the late 1800s, lots of places, Europe, were competing for more land to expand their power into. Morocco was an easy target, as it was close and needed to borrow money anyway. This gave Europeans an excuse to have control over them when they couldn't pay them back. Morocco is not a good state at this point, as they are pressured into unfair treaties. Their independence is weakened even more. At some point, they just straight up became a French colony, partly Spanish, when they signed the Treaty of Fez on March 30th, 1912, after a crisis.
And this is how the Moroccan king lost his power and worth, as previously mentioned. This changed their cities, infrastructure, language, and culture. European style took over completely, and that's not even the worst part. As Europeans lived comfortably in their newly remodeled cities, poor Moroccans lived in bad conditions and many in poverty. They not only had to worry about that, but also the French influence versus Moroccan identity as European ideals overtook their culture and education.
This is the colonization that took place during the 20th century, before they were able to break free and decolonize their country.
The Moroccan nationalist movement played a huge role in their path to independence. Remember the protectorate?
The period of French colonial rule over Morocco.
Right. During this period of rebellion, Moroccan nationalists started organizing protests against it. The French responded by arresting many of these leaders who dared to stand up against them, including Alal al-Fassi.
One specific key part of the Moroccan nationalist movement was the formation of the Istiqlal Party. Formed to promote and increase independence, this also helped with the unification, bringing different groups and people of power together as a team. This was the main thing pushing the movement forward and why it was working so effectively. This was a great leap and major step in the achievement for freedom and liberty.
Yes, the Moroccans were also inspired after World War II after seeing the gained independence of other countries and Allied landings in North Africa. They believed that the Allied victory would finally lead to their succession of self-rule and breaking free of French and Spanish control. Moroccans used the Allies' ideals to argue for their own independence from the French, pointing out the contradiction in fighting for freedom abroad while denying it in colonies.
Another key event that took place was the Casablanca Conference in 1943, an allied meeting hosted by Moroccan between Churchill and Roosevelt. In this conference, Roosevelt expressed his support for the idea of their independence, which gave Moroccans much hope.
A year after this conference was held, Moroccan nationalists wrote a document demanding full independence from France. Sultan Mohammed V supported this, making him a symbol of unity. Though the French rejected this manifesto and exiled him, they continued to fight and spark more widespread protests.
With all of this pressure against France, they eventually had to give up in 1956. France negotiated with Mohammed V and finally let them have their independence they had fought so hard for. The Sultan soon became the king and helped them unite the country for good, while the Istiqlal Party helped form Moroccan politics.
In the end, Morocco was able to build a new government, economy, and national identity free of any restraints after many years of colonization. The decolonization that took place during the Moroccan nationalist movement changed their systems and ideals forever.
Thanks for joining us today on our latest episode, Morocco's Freedom from Spanish and French Colonial Rule.